of it, you'll notice that talking just whatever about camp and those things, because those are easy for me, but the
Yeah.
dates and things for the beginnings of the Eno River Association sometimes don't come off as well.
Okay, they say we can go ahead,
Okay.
so I'll
Do you want to talk into the
introduce
microphone?
you.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Jay Williams, and I'm going to introduce our speaker, Hillary Harrison. This is the long overdue Earth Day talk. Long overdue because we had it planned before, and Hillary came down with a bad cold, so we had to put it off, but thankfully we're able to do it now. The Eno River Association, which is going to be the topic of Hillary's talk, is a model of caring for the earth right here in our community, and probably the best model locally. It has been around for 59 years, started by Margaret Nygaard and her friends, including Jean Anderson. And it was in response to Durham's plan to dam up the Eno River as a secondary water source. But Margaret and friends went to the city council and persuaded them to spare the beautiful Eno and put the water resource elsewhere. And as a result of that action, the Eno River Association was formed, and a few years later, the Eno River State Park was formed. Today's speaker, Hillary Harrison, is the Eno River Association's Director of External Engagement. Now, what does that mean? She oversees education and outreach programs, including summer day camps, guided hikes, school classroom visits, field trips, and much more. Hillary comes to us from the Outer Banks, where she grew up and worked for nearly a decade for the National Park Service at the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. And it's been my pleasure over the last 4 years as a volunteer to work closely with Hillary, and we are fortunate that she and her husband moved here to Durham and that we have her as a part of the association. So I'll turn it over to Hillary.
I'm going to drink some water because I had that cold over a month ago, but I'm still dealing with a little bit of a cough from it. If anybody had whatever this virus was, it was bad, but I'm feeling much better. Like I said, it was over a month ago, so no longer contagious, not an issue, but the cough, it's still hanging on. All right, well, thank you so much for having me this morning. I do have some notes here. I was just saying to Jay, you know, there's a lot of things in the aspects of my job that I can speak really easily upon. Some of the parts of it I don't speak on as often, so I do need to make sure I look at my notes so I can make sure I cover everything today so that you know all of the things about the Eno River and the Eno River Association that I have to share today with you. So yes, my name is Hillary Harrison. I'm the Director of External Engagement at the Eno River Association. And as Jay said, that covers a number of things that we do at the association. So when I first came on to the association in February of 2021, I was our Director of Education and Outreach. So I oversaw all of our public school programs and field trips, our summer camp programs, any public outreach education event. Recently, just a few months ago at the beginning of this year, my umbrella increased and my title changed such that now I oversee not only our education and outreach programs, but I also oversee our events manager who puts on the Festival for the Eno. So if you're familiar with the Festival for the Eno, which I'll talk more about in a little bit, that I also kind of in a lot of ways oversee that process as well. So that's me. As Jay said, I started my career with the National Park Service. I started as a student intern in 2008, I think it was. I was originally at Fort Raleigh National Historic Site talking about the Lost Colony. If you're familiar with that story, I got to talk about that for a year. And then from there, I moved to the Body Island Lighthouse at the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. And I worked there for, I think, 8 or 9 seasons, summer seasons, until I moved out to the Triangle area in 2017, I think it was. My husband and I bought a house in 2018 here in Durham. We live in East Durham towards Wake Forest, and we love it here. And from there, I worked at a couple of different places, including Durham Parks and Recreation, and then eventually landed at the Eno River Association. And I'm very happy at the Eno River Association and love the work that I do. It's a really special place. All right, so the Eno River, it is about 40 miles long. It starts in northern Orange County up here at the Confluence Natural Area, which is a nature preserve that the Eno River Association owns and operates. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But the Eno River starts up there north of Hillsborough. It makes its way down through Hillsborough, and then it goes across the northern part of Durham County, makes its way across North Durham, and then eventually flows all the way out to Falls Lake. And what I like to say about the Eno, well, something to know is that this map, the red outline on this map shows the Eno River Basin, which is more or less the Eno River watershed. Is anyone familiar with the term watershed? Probably, okay. So your watershed is basically the area not only including a body of water, but it includes the land around it and everything. It's kind of like a filter. Everything that, because of topographical changes that you do within a watershed has an impact on the local waterway that it's a part of. So the Eno River watershed is that Eno River Basin. Everything that we do on the land around the Eno River impacts the river. And what I like to say is that the river flows into Falls Lake, which flows into the Neuse River, which flows into the Pamlico Sound, which flows into the ocean. So more or less, everything that we do along the Eno not only impacts our community, but I like to say it impacts the entire world as well. If you really think about it, water is a finite resource, so it goes everywhere. And our water, in some ways, makes its way all the way out to the ocean and across the world. So we have to treat it well. All right, fantastic. Make sure that I'm staying on track with what I want to say about this. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit more about the map today. So the map shows a lot of different things. There's a lot of colors going on here. But the basic things to know is everything in green is showing protected land. And all of the things that are protected here, in some part, the Eno River Association has something to do with it. The dark green is Eno River State Park. Any of the light green areas are either federal, state, county, or city protected lands. Orange is our conservation easements, which I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. And then we also have purple, which are permanently held preserves. The purple ones here are owned and maintained by the Eno River Association. So there's a couple in particular that I'll mention: the Confluence Natural Area, Panther Branch Natural Area. And then it's not identified on this map, but right over here near Penny's Bend, we also own a nature preserve that's called Blue Indigo Preserves, and it's a neighborhood nature preserve. It's in a historically black neighborhood that we own a couple of plots of land. And if you're familiar with Penny's Bend, then you might know that it's a really important geological area. The soils of Penny's Bend are high in the pH scale and very basic, and they are home to some really unique flower species. And our nature preserve over here, Blue Indigo Preserves, is also home to those really unique plant species, which is very cool. So we also have Eno River State Park, Occoneechee Mountain State Natural Area, West Point on the Eno City Park, Penny's Bend Nature Preserve, and Little River Regional Park. So the Eno River Association, like I said, we own and operate a couple of our own nature preserves, but we also work really closely with the various organizations that own and operate the rest of those publicly held parks, especially Eno River State Park. We get confused for them, or yeah, people think that that's who we are. We aren't, but we work really closely with them, and we played a large role in the creation of it, which I'll tell you more about later. I also do want to take a moment to recognize that the land that we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Eno, Shakori, Sissipahaw, Adshishir, Occaneechi, and other people of Siouan descent, and their descendants, the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. So, although they lived in separate villages and developed distinct identities, they spoke a common Tutelo-Saponi language, and in this language, their descendants call them Yesa, which means the people. So the Eno River is actually named after one of the tribes. I mentioned the Eno. So the Eno were a tribe of indigenous folks that did once inhabit this land. So if you're wondering where the name Eno River came from, that's where it comes from. So the Great Indian Trading Path ran through the eastern part of what we now know as the United States of America. It was an important through line for indigenous people to be able to trade. It was a well-established kind of path of travel, and it was very well known amongst the different tribes and nations. It spread from Augusta, Georgia, all the way up to Petersburg, Virginia. And the Occaneechi tribe that lived in this area, and actually the trading path happened to pass right through this area, the Occaneechi tribe was really important. They were really well known among the trading path. They dominated the fur trade, so they were really an important trading partner for a lot of folks. So this was an important area for indigenous folks to pass through and was really well known. The Occaneechi tribe originated in the Ohio River Valley, and throughout a few different centuries, they migrated between Roanoke, Virginia, and Orange and Alamance counties, so really close by here. They migrated back and forth mainly due to pressures from European colonists. They were pressured by them for a variety of different reasons and were mistreated a few different times, and unfortunately, they had to kind of migrate to escape that pressure. But over the years, they eventually, for the most part, settled in Orange and Alamance counties. And their descendants of the the descendants of the Occaneechi and the variety of different tribes that existed in this area are now known all together in one kind of conglomerate tribe called the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. It is a state-recognized tribe, and they mostly operate out of Alamance and Orange counties. And we do work with them closely in a couple of different ways and really appreciate their partnership. But I want to mention that in the 1980s in Hillsborough, the remains of an Occaneechi village was found during an archaeological study. The village dated back to 1000 AD, and the archaeological site can still be, you can still see where it is. You can walk right by it if you take the river walk and you're nearby the small bridge that's next to the Vietri outlet, if you're familiar with the Riverwalk area. The archaeological site is kind of a swampy lowland area right there along Riverwalk. But if you want to see something that really represents what an Occaneechi village may have looked like, if you go over near the Hillsborough Farmers Market Pavilion, there is a replica village of an Occaneechi tribe village. It was created by the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation and is managed by them to this day. And there's a photo of it up here, so it shows their huts and various things. Sometimes if you catch them on the weekend, they may be out there working on the village, and you may be able to speak with some of the tribal folks to be able to ask them about the work that they do and their heritage, and they're usually really happy to talk to folks about that. In fact, on Saturday, tomorrow, is Hillsborough History Day, and so from 10 to 3 in downtown Hillsborough, there will be a whole lot of things, including us, out there to talk about the history of Hillsborough, and I'm certain that the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation will be out there as well. All right. Okay, so the Eno River is also very well known for its mill culture along the river. As settlers began to inhabit the area in the 18th and 19th centuries, water wheel mills were built along the river, and we know of at least 32 mills, and there was probably a significant, or perhaps not maybe a significant, but a handful more of mills that we're not aware of. The mills were an economic through line of the Eno River. They were usually built nearby wagon roads so that folks could travel to and from the various mills, and they were often a center of the community. They were a great place to not only get the goods that you needed, but also to get local news, or perhaps even news from afar that somebody may have brought into town and stopped by the mill to share with everybody. So it was kind of a gathering place, almost maybe like a pub may have been during colonial times. You go there and you learn about the news of what's going on. Just to give you a little understanding of how a water wheel mill works, is that the mill would be built, so here's the river proper. The water wheel, or the mill would be built nearby the river, and on the side would be that kind of quintessential wheel, big giant wheel. And they would dig a trench called a race that they would use to divert the water, the flow of the river, off to the side. And they could build a dam to be able to control the flow of the river, and open and close gates to be able to make it so that water would flow down, it would turn the wheel, and then all of the gears inside of that building would turn. And then they would turn, those gears would turn what are called millstones. And there were a variety of different millstones that you could use depending on what you were wanting to grind. The millstones were maybe larger, maybe smaller, depending on what they were using it for. They would stack one on top of the other, like that, and put in between the two millstones corn or wheat or whatever they might want to grind up. So the gears would turn the millstones, grind up the corn or wheat. Those were called grist mills, and that's what we mostly had on the Eno River. So they were grist mills making cornmeal or flour. But at water mills, they could also use saws to cut lumber. That didn't typically happen on the Eno River, but that is another way that you could use a mill. They also would use like cotton. They would do spin cotton to make thread and things like that as well, or to make clothing and textiles. All right. So many of the mills that existed on the Eno were owned and operated by families whose names you'll likely recognize, including the Coles, like Coal Mill Road, the Fuse, like Fuse Ford in Eno River State Park, or Sinnott, which these days we pronounce it Senate. So Senate's Hole or Turtle Hole near West Point on the Eno. There was a mill there at one point owned by the Sinnott family. But what is less known or acknowledged oftentimes is the labor that it took to construct the mills. Often enslaved labor was utilized to construct the various mills along the Eno, and often the mills may be operated by enslaved people as well. One such enslaved person was William Dink McCown. So he was an enslaved man at West Point Mill, and Dink was really interesting guy. He had a family at West Point at the West Point Mill, and he was very well skilled in milling, which was often the case for these enslaved people. They often, may be forgotten in the annals of history, but they were an important part of that mill culture and often were quite the experts in operating these mills as well. So at the Eno River Association, something that we've really been trying to do is make sure that we are acknowledging the full history. I think that sometimes things can be forgotten, especially when you have these really important names that are remembered through history because of roads and names of towns and things like that. But we also want to make sure that we're acknowledging that full history and people like William Dink McCown at the West Point Mill. So the mills on the Eno operated mainly through the 18th and 19th centuries, but when industrialization started to come into play, the mill culture really started to decline. And by 1908, when the Great Flood went through our area, it flooded the river such that it actually ended up destroying the most of the rest of the mills that existed along the Eno River, and that was kind of pretty much the end of the mill culture here on the Eno River. All right, So as you can tell, there is a lot of fantastic history. I'm sure there's so much more history that I can tell you about the Eno River, but we have to move along. But I do also, of course, want to mention the fantastic array of species that we have that live at the Eno River and call it home. So we have 12 species of freshwater mussels, we have 61 species of fish, 7 species of turtle, 14 species of snakes, 15 species of amphibians, and over 100 species of trees. We've got beautiful ephemeral spring wildflowers, one of my favorite parts of the Eno. In the spring, when it's been a long, cold winter, my favorite thing to do is go out on the Eno and to see the flowers starting to sprout. These are a couple of my favorites. This is a trout lily. This one in particular is actually called the American trout lily. The one that you see most commonly on the Eno is called the dimpled trout lily. The petals on the flower are slightly different. They're not as curved and ornate as this one is here. So I find this one to be really special. There's a very small population of these that grow at Willie Duke's Bluff area near Penny's Bend. So wanted to throw that photo in there of the American trout lily. And then the Virginia Spring Beauty as well is just another one of my favorites. It's one of the first flowers that you see in the springtime. And it's just beautiful, and I love it so much. And then, of course, we also have a number of fantastic little animals. We've got lovely butterflies and moths, box turtles, like this guy here. So from all of the adorable fuzzy, scaly, and feathered animals, we know that the Eno River is a special place. All right, so we're gonna start to talk a little bit more about the Eno River Association itself. And you may recognize the lady in this photo here, right there, and again, she's there. So in the 1960s, the Eno River was threatened. The city of Durham wanted to plan to construct a dam along the Eno River, turning it into a reservoir for drinking water for the community. Now, that's not necessarily a bad idea, but with the Eno being such a special place with its history and all of these variety of species that call this home, it just wasn't the best place to build a dam. It would have quite an impact on the ecosystem. So Margaret Nygaard, who lived along the Eno River, got wind of this, and along with neighbors and friends, including Jean Anderson, sitting next to Jay there, she started public outreach efforts to show people this amazing place. She did things like led hikes. Her family and friends led canoeing and rafting trips along the Eno, and they just spent time trying to talk to people about how special this place is. They knew that if people knew how special it was, they may join into the fight and may want to join the efforts to fight against the damming of the river. She knocked on doors, visited city, county, and state representatives, and she fought for the Eno. Margaret was tenacious. Jean has told me that multiple times, and she wouldn't take no for an answer. So on October 14th, 1966, the Association for the Preservation of the Eno River Valley Incorporated, and yes, that is our legal name, and I have to write it on paperwork, but we are called the Eno River Association in town. That's what we're known as. It was created. So October 14th, 1966. In 1968, the city of Durham changed their plans, and they decided instead to build a dam on Little River instead of having such a grand impact on the Eno River, which was good news. And from there, a legacy began. So over the next few decades, the Eno River Association did incredible things. They created an alliance with the Nature Conservancy, who helped to purchase the original protected pieces of land along the Eno that would eventually become the Eno River State Park. On June 15, 1973, the state of North Carolina approved the creation of the park. And in 1975, Eno River State Park opened its doors, or its gates rather, and doors, I guess, it has a visitor center, for the first time. So also in the early 1970s, the land that is now known as West Point on the Eno City Park was purchased as well. And in July of 1976, the North Carolina Folklife Festival took place on the banks of the Eno at West Point on the Eno. This festival was the precursor to the common day Eno River Festival, or Festival for the Eno. And in 1980 is when we had the official first Festival for the Eno. So this year we are in our 46th summer of holding the Festival for the Eno. And again, I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So Margaret Nygaard served as the president of the Eno River Association for the first 10 years of its existence, and then from there, she served as a volunteer executive vice president for decades until her death in November of 1995. Margaret was expected at a board meeting, and she didn't show up, which caused concern. That was very unlike her. They went to check on her, found her severely ill in her home, and she was transported to the hospital and left this world shortly after. The steadfast work of the Eno River Association did not perish, though, with Margaret. We made sure of that, and we continue her legacy to this day. All right, and now we're going to fast forward to modern day Eno River Association and all of the things that we are up to. So the mission of the Eno River Association is to conserve and protect the natural, cultural, and historical resources of the Eno River Basin. And we do this through a variety of different programs. We have a number of different program teams within the association. Our organization began as a volunteer-led organization, but now we have 14 full-time staff positions. We have a number of seasonal festival and camp staff, and we have hundreds of volunteers that help to make all of this work happen. We raise awareness about the river through the Festival for the Eno, our education programs and advocacy, and we purchase and protect land, and then we also care for the land through stewardship. So how much land have we helped protect? 7,800 acres. I actually think it's a little bit more than that now because that slide is maybe like a couple months old and we're always protecting land. So that may not be entirely accurate, but throughout the years, most of the land that we've helped to protect has been for Eno River State Park. When we looked at that map earlier, you saw that big blob of dark green. That's Eno River State Park. There's been nearly almost 5,000 acres of land that's been protected just for the state park itself. As I mentioned before, we have other properties, including our 3 nature preserves that the Eno River Association owns: Confluence Natural Area in Hillsborough, Panther Branch Natural Area in Efland, and that neighborhood nature preserve called Blue Indigo Preserves. It's on Stanley Road near Penny's Bend in East Durham. So the way that we work with the state park mainly is by helping them to protect land that's within their master plan. So the Eno River State Park has, the map of the Eno and has a master plan of what they would like to protect. And over the years, as land becomes available, we are able to assist the state park in a variety of different ways depending on the situation. So, for example, if a piece of land becomes available, but the state doesn't have the time or the ability to get the funding together to make that purchase, the Eno River Association can often swoop in, make that purchase, and hold the land in time to be able to allow the Eno River State, or really the state park or the state government, to pull things together to be able to find the funding and then purchase the land from us. That happens in some instances. Other instances may be that we help with the actual transaction of the purchase of land. So the land becomes available, the state is able to bring forth the funding, but we help with the transaction process so that we can kind of help to make sure that the land gets protected properly. So we work with them in a couple of different ways. And we've done that for other organizations as well. Durham Parks and Recreation for the creation of West Point on the Eno City Park, as well as Little River Regional Park, which is a collaboration between Orange and Durham counties, but Eno River Association played a role in the creation of that park as well. And the support that financial support that we use to be able to do that work is mainly through grant writing and then also support from our membership. We are a nonprofit land trust, meaning that we rely upon donors and members to help us financially to be able to continue to do the work that we do. So I wanted to kind of talk about the main couple of ways that, or main couple of programs that the Eno River Association has to do the work that we do. I'll talk a little bit later about my education programs and brag on my staff a little bit, but I also want to tell you a little bit more about the land protection part of things. Earlier, when we looked at that map, we looked at those orange blobs on the map, and I mentioned conservation easements. So the way that conservation easement works is that we assist landowners with putting an easement on their property. If they have a piece of land that's important to the Eno River that needs to be protected to make sure that it's conserving the Eno, then we will help those landowners to put an easement on their property. And that easement, it still is under the landowner's ownership, but it is protected in perpetuity, meaning that if the landowner were to sell their land eventually, that easement on the land is protected in perpetuity. It doesn't go away. The next landowner has to abide by that conservation easement. So that's a great way that we can work with folks that want to help protect the Eno, have land on the Eno, but they still want to live on the Eno. We can put an easement on their property to make sure that it gets protected in perpetuity. As I mentioned, we work closely with the state park to do land transactions, and I want to give you a little story about a really exciting purchase that we did recently. You may have heard about it. We helped with the purchase of the Occoneechee Speedway property in Hillsborough to make it a part of Eno River State Park now. So in 2021, we were approached by the Classical American Homes Preservation Trust, and they owned the property that is the Occoneechee Speedway. There's the James M. Johnston Nature Preserve, as well as Airmount, which is a classical home. They knew that they wanted to keep Airmount, but it doesn't really fall within their mission to have the Speedway or to have a nature preserve. So they wanted to see if they could sell it to an organization that would be better suited for that. So they approached us, and we knew that we weren't really the organization for that. We didn't have the capacity to manage it. So we went out looking and talking to different organizations in the area and decided that the Eno River State Park would be a fantastic organization to be able to own and manage the Occoneechee Speedway. But a little piece of it that we also wanted to be thoughtful about was part of this land that the Classical American Homes Preservation Trust was selling is that archaeological site for the Occoneechee Village that was found in the 1980s. The Eno River State Park folks said it would be okay to have it, but we knew that it would be in the better hands of somebody that would want to own and steward it, namely the Occoneechee Band of the Saponi Nation. So we reached out to them, asked them if they would be interested. Unfortunately, they didn't really have the capacity to be able to own and manage such a property, but the Archaeological Society is a great steward of this type of land, and they have the expertise to be able to work with a tribe later down the road if they do decide that they want to be the owners and steward of that land. So over about a 3-year period, the Eno River Association worked with Eno River State Park and the Archaeological Society to do this transaction, and I'm happy to say that in January of this year, we completed the transaction, and now Eno River State Park owns the Occoneechee Speedway and the James M. Johnston Nature Preserve. It's all now a part of the state park, and then that archaeological site belongs to the Archaeological Society with the thought that eventually they may transition that over to ownership to the Occoneechee Band of the Saponi Nation, where it should lie eventually. Exciting. All right, so I thought that it would be fun to run through, oh, I lost my name tag. Didn't even notice. I thought that it would be fun to run through the decades a little bit over time, just to be able to see the growth of land protected by the Eno River Association. So this is kind of a fun map to go through. So this is in 1970. So by the time we reached 1970, the Eno River Association existed. It was formed in '66, and we had protected the land that would eventually become West Point on the Eno City Park. Oh no. 10 years later, by 1980, we had protected the land that is now Eno River State Park. So this land, all that there. West Point on the Eno is still there, and Penny's Bend Nature Preserve was protected as well. And by 1990, even more acreage for Eno River State Park grew. It became wider, and there's more of it along the Eno. And then in 2000, by the time we reached 2000, in the 1990s, they had added the Occoneechee Mountain State Natural Area to the North Carolina Park System. Occoneechee Mountain State Natural Area is managed by the same park rangers that manage Eno River State Park. So if you've been to both sites and see familiar park rangers, that's why they manage both, which is a lot of land, but it makes sense because Occoneechee Mountain abuts the Eno River. And then by 2010, the Eno River Association had purchased the land that is the Confluence Natural Area up here in northern Hillsborough. And we had worked with Durham and Orange counties to create Little River Regional Park. And by 2020, as you can see, there's even more. So if we went all the way back to the beginning, there was that. And then over the years, we've added even more. And I can say that if I had gotten a more recent map, to 2025, there would be even more land there. And what this is showing here is just the protected land that is part of the parks and preserves. It doesn't include the additional conservation easements and other smaller plots of land that have been protected as well. But in all, almost 8,000 acres in the past 59 years, which is exciting. All right. Yay. As you can tell, probably the timing of this photo, this is pandemic times when we were outside in July with face masks on. Not a fun time, but it was still worth it. Okay, so education programs. This is me and my staff. We do a lot of different things. So I'm really pleased to say that since I started in February of 2021, when I began, we had just transitioned from having a part-time education director. His name is Dave Cook. He's fantastic. He's like, Eno forever. He's fantastic. He was the superintendent of Eno River State Park for a number of years, and we were really fortunate to have him for a few years at Eno River Association. And since then, he's moved out to the mountains with his grandbaby, which is fantastic for him. But he was my predecessor. He was part-time, and then he had an AmeriCorps member that worked with him as well. And up until I came on, we were seeing about an average of maybe 1,800 people per year between our different programs. Over the past couple of years, I came on as a full-time staff member. I had an AmeriCorps member that worked with me. We brought her on as a full-time staff member, and then we still have an AmeriCorps member. I say that with the caveat of that was true until a couple of weeks ago when the federal funding changed that. But in essence, we have a 3-person education team these days, all essentially full-time staff. And these days, this number needs to be updated. It's actually more than 6,000 people we typically see in a year between our various education programs. Our education programs include things like guided hikes, which was a tradition of the Eno River Association. It's how Margaret started to tell people about how awesome the Eno is. We continue that tradition today. We do monthly or bi-monthly education programs at different places on the Eno to talk about, birds or turtles or wood whittling or whatever it might be. We also have other community events that we hold as well throughout the year. We have our Eno River Wall Calendar, which Jay plays a large role in. Thank you, Jay, for that. It's one of his big things that he volunteers for the calendar as well as our guided hikes. We also have publications called our Eno River Journals that tell about a variety of different things along the Eno. Most recently, we had 2 volumes that talked about Indigenous people and people of color who have history along the Eno throughout the many, many centuries. And then we have summer camp programs, which is coming up very soon. I'm deep in summer camp programming right now. I'll tell you a little bit more about the details of that in a moment. And then we do school outreach to visit public school classrooms, and we do field trips to the Eno River as well. We're very busy. So getting kids outdoors is one of my core values. I think it's really important. I spent a lot of time outdoors as a child, and there is evidence to show that getting children outdoors is very important. We know for their emotional and physical health that kids need to be outside. There was a recent review of over 300 studies that showed a strong connection between green spaces and mental health in children. So it's super important. And also it helps with their academic studies as well. A 5-year study of 12,750 students in 8 California schools showed that children that received environmental education tested tested high and above students that didn't receive outdoor environmental education in addition to their scientific classroom studies. So really helpful. I see a lot of value in it. In fact, I had a teacher a couple of months ago at a field trip that we had. He came up to me. We were working with his 8th graders at Orange Middle School. We've been working with them for a couple of years. And he came up and he said, we got their test scores back recently. And on the EOGs, there's 3 scientific kind of themes that they have to learn about and get tested on. And he said there was, I guess, maybe chemistry and biology, and then environmental science. And he said our 8th graders tested high and above the other 2 parts of the EOGs for science. They tested high and above in environmental science. And he said, I believe that's all due to you all doing hands-on learning with them. What they're learning outside with you all and in the classroom in this hands-on way is really having an impact on what they're learning and what they're retaining for environmental science, which was really great to hear. So we know the outdoor experiences are important for youth and community health, and yet urban, minority, and low-income populations are often underrepresented and underserved in outdoor experiences. So through our public school partnerships, we also try to prioritize the Title I public schools that we have in our system. In Durham, there are almost all, really, of the public schools are Title I, less so in Orange County, but there are still a number of them there. And by Title I, I mean Title I schools receive federal funding, and they're mostly comprised of a student population that are either BIPOC or low-income students. It's based upon the average salaries within that particular community in the learning areas, and a couple of other things as well, but we see that those Title I schools are most often full of BIPOC and low-income students. So we really do try to prioritize working with those schools. They're the ones that really can't afford to work with organizations that charge a lot of money to do these programs. We typically provide our programs free or very low cost to these schools. So we've been working towards building long-lasting year-round partnerships. We really want to be able to see these students throughout their school year and to be able to work with them throughout their curriculum. So we currently have 10 school partnerships across Orange and Durham counties, which we see them either monthly or quarterly, and then we bring them out to a field trip on the Eno River. So this spring we held 11 field trips to the Eno, and we saw over 800 students through that time. All right, so I walk the Eno Science and Nature Camp. It's coming up in 2 weeks. It's very soon. So I walk the Eno Science and Nature Camp takes place at Eno River State Park. It's an entirely outdoor experience for kids. We bring 8 to 12-year-olds out to the river. We have 60 students per week for 2 full weeks. It's a day camp, so they come from about 9 to 4. And they spend the entire day outside. in learning groups where they rotate through a variety of activities. So those activities, typically there's at least 2 or 3 environmental education hands-on learning activities. They also get to do arts and crafts. They have a time for what we call free flow, where they get to just go, swim in the river or sit on the riverbanks and, I don't know, think about turtles or whatever it might be. We see I Walk the Eno as an opportunity for young kids to be able to learn that the outdoors can be a really fun space to spend time, learn new things, and to meet friends, and just get to enjoy being outside. So it's very, very fun. And then from there, we have our Eno River Field Station Summer Camp. This takes place for a week in late July. It takes place at the Confluence Natural Area, so it's our space, and we have a fantastic covered pavilion there where we get to use as kind of our home base. And at that camp, we have 39 12 to 15-year-olds that come out to camp for 1 week. It's a day camp with 1 overnight session. And the sessions throughout the day are comprised of guest educators, researchers, and scientists that work in scientific career fields. So it might be someone from Wildlife Resources Commission, or the Museum of Natural Sciences, or the U.S. Geological Survey. They come out and teach the kids about the work that they do and the career that they have, and then teach them field study techniques. So this is a really fantastic opportunity for kids that have a real interest in scientific concepts and who might want to pursue a career in the sciences. They kind of get that head start on learning how to do field study. I wish I would have had that, because I went to school for marine biology, and I learned a lot about that in college, but would have loved to have learned that in high school as well. And then, of course, we have our Festival for the Eno. So the festival is in its 46th year. This is our mascot for the year, the belted kingfisher. It has a Roanoke darter fish in its mouth there. We kind of have a theme for the festival this year. We were thinking about what this could represent, and I think that this represents the food chain and food webs, and represents a healthy ecological community. And our idea is to translate this into, the Eno River Association is not only protecting the river to create healthy ecological communities, but I think it's creating a healthy human community as well, of people that are connected about one thing and are excited to be a part of a community that has a shared vision. So the Festival for the Eno takes place on the weekend of July 4th. It always takes place on July 4th, and then whatever weekend day happens to be on either side of that. So this year it's on Friday, July 4th, and Saturday, July 5th. It takes place at West Point on the Eno City Park, and it has we have 4 music stages of different bands playing throughout the entire day. Local food vendors, so we have a whole food truck area with local food vendors of a variety of different types of food from different cuisines across the whole world, really. We have a juried craft show as well, and those craft artists that get into the craft show get to have a booth at the festival and sell their amazing wares. We have everything from pottery to jewelry to fine art, photography, all sorts of things. We also provide hands-on educational activities. So my staff, we set up a tent in the river, and we go out and we catch little macroinvertebrate, tiny little bugs that live in the river, and talk about water quality and talk about all the amazing things that the river has to offer. So we see it as our biggest opportunity to educate people about the Eno. We have between usually 15,000 to 20,000 participants across the 2 days that come out to the festival, and it's to raise awareness and tell people about the Eno and the Eno River Association, and also just to have a good time. I will say it's very hot usually, so I hope to see you there this year, but I understand if not, because it's hot. If it happens to be a milder summer, maybe it'll be more comfortable for all of us. Last year was pretty oppressively hot. And then a final component of the work that we do at the Eno River Association is advocacy. It's kind of the grassroots start of the association, right? Like advocacy was the beginning. So we keep that up, and we have to, because as we know, development pressures are only increasing in our area. We are a very fast-growing area here in Durham and Orange counties. So we're deliberate about building relationships with our city and county officials. We want them to know that the Eno River is important and that it's, it needs to be protected. So we work with them for that to make sure that we have people on our side when they're making decisions about things. And then we also mobilize our membership in a number of different ways through our monthly e-newsletter, our social media, and then we also have an advocacy email list where we email out opportunities for folks to fight against the development that might be happening that we feel might have a great impact on the Eno River. All right, and then I figured for the last little bit here of my talk, I just wanted to talk about some of my favorite places on the Eno. I have a couple of places that are really near and dear to my heart and have just some fun stories behind them. And then after that, I would love to take any questions from you all. So I mentioned the Confluence Natural Area multiple times in this presentation today. It really is a beautiful spot. It's one of my very favorite places on the Eno. We do a variety of programs and activities there, and it's a great space for it because we have this lovely covered pavilion. We have composting toilets out there, so there's a bathroom, which is not always the case at any of the trails on the Eno, or at many of the trails on the Eno. It's owned and operated by us, so from my perspective, it's easy for me to do a program out there because I can just say, yes, let's do a program, and instead of having to ask, hey, can I do a program at your site? So that's really wonderful, and it's just a beautiful space. It's 278 acres, I think, these days. There's a number of hiking trails there. It's just lovely, really, any time of the year. There's a great wildflower population as well in the springtime. And another little cool thing that's going on right now, this person right here is Beverly Scarlett. She has a deep history along the Eno River. Her family genealogy stretches back centuries along the Eno, and she grew up here and has really strong connections still to the Eno. She's contributed to our Eno River journals about Indigenous people and people of color along the Eno. And more recently, Beverly discovered that she also has not only Black and enslaved and formerly enslaved genealogy here, but she also has Indigenous roots as well. So she has become quite the proponent of Indigenous culture and acknowledging and uplifting that. And we are excited to say that at the Confluence Natural Area, we've been pursuing learning more about the potential of perhaps having Indigenous burial mounds out at the site. Beverly has been helping us to kind of discover and uncover the history of that. So there will be more to come as we learn more about that process, but that has been really fun, and we've been really enjoying working with Beverly on that. And then another favorite trail of mine is the Pump Station Trail. This is in Eno River State Park. It's not an Eno River State Park proper. It's off of Rivermont Road in Durham. It's kind of a random trail, but it's got a really interesting history. So in the late 19th century, there was a kind of another project to dam the Eno River that did happen to create this pump station. So they needed fresh water for the community, and there was a dam built on the Eno in this area. It was probably much more rudimentary than what they would have made in the 1960s, but they built up a reservoir off of the side of the river, and this is a part of the gate that kind of leads to that reservoir. And it was a water source for the community, but unfortunately it was pretty inconsistent, and there was a lot of complaints lodged at the city saying, I didn't get water today, or it's really inconsistent, or it was dirty, or whatever. So it only lasted for maybe less than 20 years, or maybe 30 years, but in about 1916, this was kind of set to the side and really abandoned. And from there, they dammed Lake Mickey and made that the reservoir, which is still one of our drinking water reservoirs today. And then also the Hillendale Reservoir, which is, I think, defunct these days, but they built that as well. But pump station, the relics of that, the kind of the rubble is still left over from the pump station that was built in the 19th century. And it's just a really cool place. You go out on the trail and you're walking along and it's all just nature and beautiful. And then all of a sudden there's these old, relics of a time past. And it's just really beautiful and feels kind of fantastical and otherworldly to me. I always think that this photo reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, if you're familiar with that. I don't know, it's just really lovely. So it's a great trail. There's also some unique species that grow here as well. The Adamasco lily and the dwarf-crested iris are not super unique to the Eno, but there are some nice populations of them that are at Pump Station. But this one in particular, this is called the yellow lady slipper orchid, and it is really uncommon in our area and really uncommon along the Eno, but there is a population of them that grow along this little hillside near the Pump Station Trail. And I always knew about it and didn't make it out there until this spring, and they're really cool. So just a really unique trail. And then last but not least is maybe a fairly unknown spot along the Eno. So West Point on the Eno City Park has a trail over on the opposite side of the park from where the mill is. And this trail is called the Eagle Trail. And it stretches between West Point on the Eno City Park and my office. So the Eno River Association office sits right on Guess Road, right where the Eno crosses under Guess Road, and it's at the point that Eno River State Park and West Point on the Eno meet. We have like a little tiny sliver of land there that is the Eno River Association office. And so we have access to this Eagle Trail here that could take you all the way to West Point on the Eno, but there's a lovely 1-mile loop from my office that we take just about every day. If we've had a long meeting or if it's just been a day of sitting at my desk for a long time, just getting out on the trail is really lovely and beautiful. And there's these really great 2 spots where the water just flows just so beautifully through all of the rocks and makes for these really nice rapids and riffles. This spot in particular feels very fantastical and otherworldly to me, or I feel like maybe I'm in Scotland or something. It's just beautiful. So that's one of my favorite places on the Eno and brings me a lot of peace, especially when we're doing a lot of work and a lot of thinking at work. It's nice to take a little bit of a break and get to walk the trail. All right. So that is kind of the history of the Eno and the Eno River Association. Folks are always wondering how can we get involved? There's a couple of different ways that are the great ways to get involved. Lots of different ways, but here's some of the highlights. So one is to become a member of the Eno River Association and to donate. As I said, we are a nonprofit land trust. We rely on donors and members to be able to help support the work that we do. So becoming a member is easy to do. You can join on our website. There's an option to donate, and you can set yourself up for one single donation, or even better, maybe a monthly donation is fantastic, because then you just kind of set it and forget it. I do that with a lot of my nonprofit donations that I do. Another way to get involved is to volunteer with us. The Festival for the Eno requires about 600 volunteers. We have about 900 different shifts at the festival, but it takes about 600 people to volunteer for those. So if that's of interest to you, the volunteer portal is open. As I said, it's very hot, so understandable if not. But if not, and if you do like to get outside, perhaps at a better time of the year, stewardship work days are a really great way to do that. We do invasive species removal or trail building, things like that. That's a great way to get outside. I know I've seen Jay at a number of stewardship work days over the years. And another great way to get involved if being outside and like getting to work is not quite your thing, I'm always looking for volunteers who are interested in educating people about the Eno River. We have a variety of different ways to do that. You could be a hike leader if that's of interest to you, but even something as simple as wanting to talk to people about the Eno River, perhaps at a community event. We get invited often to come out to events and set up a table and talk to people about the work that we do. And I can't say yes to all of them, and I really sometimes like to have a weekend off. So I'm always looking for volunteers that are willing to come out and stand at a table or sit at a table and talk to folks about the Eno River and the Eno River Association. So that's a great way to get involved as well. And if you have interest in any of these in particular, let me know, and I'm happy to connect you with whatever person or resource we need to connect you with to volunteer. And then last but not least is just to stay connected with us and share with people about the work that we do. We have a monthly e-newsletter that goes out on the 1st of every month. I can get you to the spot on the website to be able to sign up for that. If you want to put in your email address, then we would just add you to the list. And every month we do an e-newsletter that has all of the awesome things that we've been up to and all of the things to look forward to for the coming months. So that's a great way to stay connected. And if you happen to be on social media, we do have a Facebook and an Instagram page as well, which is also a nice way to get connected. But excuse me, honestly, the e-news is really the best way, in my opinion. I don't spend a lot of time on social media these days, and it's fine. But the e-news is a great spot, and we put a lot of work into that. And that's our website, just enoriver.org. That's us. That's how you can see all of the things that we're up to and stay in touch. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. I think there was a microphone over there if folks wanted to pass it around. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is civilization in danger of encroaching on all of this? Do you have a lot of problem with that?
You mean like development and things like that? I think yes and no. I mean, the good news is that the land that we've protected so far is protected in perpetuity. I mean, unless something really wild happens, like they say state parks are all just going to get sold off, like we're good on that. We've got thousands and thousands of acres that have been protected. And, if we go back to that map at the beginning, we've really tried to be very intentional about when we're protecting land along the Eno to protect all of the land that abuts the Eno. And looking at this map, there's really not a whole lot of gaps these days, which is fantastic. If you follow the track of the Eno, especially from this side, all of this light green and then the dark green, this is all protected land. So that's really fantastic. But we do have to also, recognize and acknowledge that development pressure is a real thing here. We get that question a lot of like, how do you balance the need for housing and affordable housing with the needs of the Eno River? And our answer to that is that it's really a case-by-case basis when development pressure is coming in. So for example, there was a project that was proposed a couple of years ago nearby West Point on the Eno called Black Meadow Ridge. Well, that's kind of the area that we're trying to protect, but nearby West Point on the Eno, there's a hillside that leads up to an area of undeveloped land that's not protected right now. And there was a developer that came in and they wanted to build this really compact housing subdivision up there. And at the time, the city had approved it for, a certain amount of homes on this plot of land, and it really wasn't going to be a good idea for the Eno because it was at the top of this hill, and whenever rain and stormwater would come down, it would just flow right through that neighborhood and go directly down into the Eno. And so we knew that sedimentation and pollution and things was going to be an issue with this. So we, with other neighbors in the area, did fight back against that. It was a long process. It happened the first couple of years that I was at the Eno. We led a hike at West Point on the Eno, kind of like the old school days of Margaret Nygaard, and we were like, yeah, we can't do this development. Unfortunately, the development is still going to happen, but the good news is it's not in the way that they had originally planned. Because of our fight against it, they had to change the development plan, and now instead of being single homes, it's actually going to be a couple-story, kind of like apartment condo setup, which will have much less of an impact on the Eno because there's not as much impermeable surfaces. And also, in that agreement, there is an easement of land that the Eno River Association is going to own that is between that development and that hillside that we will maintain as a buffer with vegetation so that when stormwater comes down and it does rain, it'll filter out at least some of that sedimentation and pollution that will happen. So that's an example of a development that we knew was going to have a really bad impact on the Eno, right? There's been other developments that have come up nearby the Eno that we just have to really decide if it's worth it or not to fight, because the pressures are so high and we really do need to be able to provide affordable housing. So there have been a couple of other developments that have come across our desk, and then we look at it and we kind of have to really decide if it's worth the fight or if we need to allow the community to be able to have that housing. So it's kind of a balancing act. But the good news is that, you know, there's still quite a bit of land, especially over in Orange County over here, that we still need to work on protecting. And that tends to be a much more rural area, at least for now. And hopefully we can do the work to protect it before that development pressure really encroaches there. So that's a good question.
Is on? Oh, just have to get closer, that's all. It's been very nice to see the increased recognition by governments and health organizations and so on of the benefits of being outdoors. You can now get a prescription for being outdoors in some countries, maybe here, I don't know. So that's very nice. Are you working with the youth organizations such as the Scout organizations and Big Brothers and Sisters and so on a regular basis for them to come out and do projects for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do work often with Scout troops, yes, so in a couple of different ways. So Eagle Scouts, as you probably or may not know, they typically have to do kind of like a final project to get through and graduate, as it were, from their scout time. And so we've worked with Eagle Scouts to do things like building picnic tables or benches at our preserves or on our trails. We had one recently that built this a picnic table in this cute little kiosk that we are going to put field guides in at the confluence, so that when people come to the confluence and they say, oh man, I really wish I would have brought my bird field guide, there might be one in the little library box there. So we work with them there. And then also, over the years, we have had a lot of requests for programs with the Girl Scouts, in particular, to help them with some of the badges that they receive. There's a couple of programs that we offer that are aligned really well with the Girl Scout badges. And so over the years, we've had those requests, and recently my education manager, Audrey, created a whole kind of program guide for the Girl Scouts to say, if you're looking for this badge, we can give you this program. If you're looking for this badge, we can provide this program. So we do partner with them in a couple of ways to get the kids outdoors. I haven't really worked too much with the Boys and Girls Club, but I think that that's a great idea to keep an eye out for. I do find that the public school programs, we can reach the widest amount of kids in the smallest amount of time, which has been, in my opinion, super successful. And the way that I see it, I didn't mention this earlier, but I write this in a lot of grant applications because I think that there's a real good argument for this. I see our public school programs as kind of that introduction to the Eno and a real pipeline to get these kids into our other programs and maybe eventually to become volunteers or maybe even staff of the Eno River Association. Like, to me, that's pie in the sky, right? As a kid comes in, fourth grade, they see us in their classroom, they come to a field trip, and then they decide that they want to go to I Walk the Eno summer camp. They do that. Then they come to Eno River Field Station when they get older. They go to that. And then later they volunteer with us. And then maybe eventually, because they've spent all of this time on the Eno, one day they want to come back and get a job with us. Like, that's my dream. That's what we want to see. So that's really kind of how I try to frame things and get a really big picture, kind of well-rounded opportunity for kids to engage with us in a lot of different ways.
Maybe say a few words about your relationship with the North Carolina Mountains to Sea Trail.
Yeah, so so the Mountains to Sea Trail, it goes along the Eno in a lot of different places, right? So we do work with them in a number of different ways. They operate really well kind of on their own, but we do provide sometimes like advertisements, or we connect them with volunteers that we have. So if you're not familiar with the Mountains to Sea Trail, there's a North Carolina-wide trail that goes all the way from the mountains out to Jockey's Ridge in Nags Head on the Outer Banks. The trail is not 100% completely in natural space, if that makes sense. There are some spots that you kind of have to like get off the trail and walk along the road a little bit, but their big mission is to have this trail be a continuous trail all the way from the mountains to sea, entirely on natural space trails. And the Eno happens to be a great spot for that. There's almost 100% on trail for the Mountains to Sea Trail on the Eno, except for maybe like 2 spots. So we're working on that slowly but surely. As properties become available or landowners agree to let us put conservation easements on spots, then we've been able to slowly but surely make it super continuous. But we do work with them in a couple of different ways. It's a collaboration kind of as needed. But certainly they do a lot of fantastic work for the Eno. Like they take a lot of the work off of our shoulders for some of the trails, because there's trails in their system that exist on the Eno, and they just take care of them, and we say thank you. That's fantastic.
I would add to that one of the 2 people who does the most important work on the Mountains to Sea Trail in the park is Rose Boyarsky's son, Bill, who organizes work days to get the work done.
Wait, Rose, is that you? Oh, great. Bill's great. Bill's great. I love him. He's so nice. That's awesome. Yay.
And the other comment I wanted to make is about the I Walk the Eno summer camp. One of the things that makes that such an exceptional camp is that the counselors are all public school teachers who are master educators. You saw Hillary's slide where there was a teacher and a camper sitting together in the water with what looked like telescopes together. Mm-hmm. That's Christine, and she's an elementary school teacher who is smart, funny, warm, creative, dedicated. She's the kind of elementary school teacher that we all wished we had had, and she's not the exception. That the teachers who help out with the camp are really wonderful.
I agree. Yeah, Christine is the best teacher that I have ever met. She's so amazing. She unfortunately won't be at iWalk this year, but it's for a good thing, because she got I think, as far as I know, she had applied for it, which is why she told me she couldn't come, but she is going to some kind of STEM convention in Germany this summer, which is so cool. So she, these days, is the STEM teacher for Eno River Academy. So she sees all of the kids from kindergarten to 8th grade and teaches them about science, technology, engineering, and math concepts. And she's just the best teacher ever. She will be at Field Station this year, but she can't make it to iWalk this year. But it's actually okay. We found a really fantastic replacement for her. Something that I find is really important too is to have representation in our camps of our teachers. So over the years, we've tended to have very white, female-led teacher groups, which makes sense. That's kind of the field. There's a lot of women teachers. And so I'm always being really thoughtful about trying to make sure that we have a male teacher. And a couple of years ago, I was fortunate that I was able to hire on a Spanish-speaking teacher. She's native Colombian, and she was interested in teaching with us, and she speaks Spanish fluently and English pretty fluently. It's her second language. And then this year, when I learned that Christine couldn't make it to camp anymore, I found another teacher who is actually a friend of this Spanish-speaking teacher, and his name is Nelson, and he'll be joining us this year, and he is a Spanish-speaking teacher as well. He's actually native Colombian as well. So now we definitely have some diversity as far as language, ethnicity, and gender, which is great and really what I would like to see at our camps. So it's a silver lining for Christine not making it this year. Thank you.